Kantaloor Sala is celebrating the Shankara Jayanti with an international Śrīśaṅkara lecture by a great scholar of erudite, SWAMI, His Holiness SWAMI TATTWAMAYANANDA, and our chief patron of our Kantaloor Sala, His Holiness SWAMI Achyuta Bharati, the chair of the Śrīśaṅkara Naduvil Matham, and also the Pushpanjali Swamiyar of Padmanabha Swami Temple. He is delivering the benedictory address, and now we will commence the program with a Vedic prayer. The great Vedic scholar Mullamangalam Narayanan Nambudiri will recite the Vedic mantra as the prayer. I request Mullamangalam Narayanan to Nambudiri to present the prayer.
Om Swasti no mimitamashvina bhagaswasti dev vyaditirana swasti pusha asuro dadhatuna swasti dyava prithvi Stavastaye vayumupabravaamahai swasti bhuvanasya yaspati brihaspatim sarvaganam stavastaye aditya bhavantu na Ishve deva Asvastaye Vaishvanaro Vasuragnisvastaye Deva Avantvrbhavasvastaye Svastino Rudra Patvam Hasa Svasti Mitra Varuna Svasti Pathye Revati Svastina Indraschagnischa Svastino Adite Kridhi Svasti Pantha Manuchare Masur Ya Chandramasa Vivaha Punardadata Ghanata Janata Sangame Mahi Namo Brahmane Namo Astvagnaye Namah Prithibhye Namah Oshadhibhya Namo Vache Namo Vachaspataye Namo Vishnave Mahate Karomi Om Namo Brahmane Namo Astvagnaye Namah Prithibhye Namah Oshadhibhya Namo Vache Namo Vachaspataye Namo Vishnave Mahate Karomi Om Namo Brahmane Namo Astvagnaye Namah Prithibhye Namah Oshadhibhyo Namo Vache Namo Vachaspataye Namo Vishnave Mahate Karomi Om തച്ഛയോരാവൃണീമഹേ ഗാതും യജ്ഞായ ഗാതും യജ്ഞപതയേ ദൈവീ സ്വസ്തിരസ്തു ന സ്വസ്തിർ മാനുഷേഭ്യഃ ഊർധ്വം ജിഗാതു ഭേഷജം ശന്നോ അസ്തു ദ്വിപദേ ചതുഷ്പദേ ഓം.
ധന്യവാദാः മുല്ലമംഗലം നാരായണൻ നമ്പൂരി महाभागाः. अधुना स्वागतभाषणं वर्तते. Now the welcome speech by Dr. K. Unnikishan, our Assistant Director Academic of Kantaloor Sala and also Principal of the Adarsh Sanskrit Vidyapitha at Gaya, Bihar. He is participating with us and delivering the welcome speech. Dr. K. Unnikishan.
സദാശിവസമാരംഭാം ശങ്കരാചാര്യമധ്യമാം അസ്മദാചാര്യപര്യന്താം വന്ദേ ഗുരുപരമ്പരാം. ശ്രീഗുരോശ്ചരണാംഭോജം യസ്യാം ദിശി വിരാജതേ തസ്യൈ ദിശേ നമസ്കുർമ കായേന വചസാ ധിയാ. ശ്രുതിസ്മൃതിപുരാണാനാം ആലയം കരുണാലയം നമാമി ഭഗവത്പാദം ശങ്കരം ലോകശങ്കരം. ശങ്കരം ശങ്കരാചാര്യം കേശവം ബാദരായണം സൂത്രഭാഷ്യകൃതൗ വന്ദേ ഭഗവന്തൗ പുനഃ പുനഃ. കാലട്യാം ശങ്കരോ ജാത സർവജ്ഞ സർവശാസ്ത്രവിത് അദ്വൈതസ്ഥാപകാചാര്യോ ജ്ഞാനമൂർത്തിർമഹേശ്വര. വിദിതാഖില ശാസ്ത്രസുധാ ജലധേ മഹിതോപനിഷത് കഥിതാർത്ഥനിധേ. ഹൃദയേ കലയേ വിമലം ശരണം ഭവശങ്കര ദേശികമേ ശരണം. സർവേഭ്യോ നമഃ. ശങ്കര ഭഗവത്പാദ സന്യാസിനഃ ദാർശനികസ്യ ന്യായവാദിനഃ വ്യാഖ്യാതുഃ കവേഃ സംഘാടകസ്യ ച ഭവ്യ സമന്വയോ ഭവതി. സർവവിചാരാണാം ആധാരഭൂതസ്യ അദ്വൈത വേദാന്ത സിദ്ധാന്തസ്യ സംസ്ഥാപകോയം ആചാര്യവർയ. അല്പേനൈവ കാലേന സ്വീയം കർത്തവ്യം നിർവൂഹ്യ ദിവമഗാത്. വയം ജാനീമഃ അഷ്ടമേ വയസി സന്യാസഃ, ദ്വാദശേ വയസി സർവശാസ്ത്ര പാരംഗതഃ, ഷോഡശേ വയസി ഭാഷ്യപ്രകരണ സ്തോത്ര ഗ്രന്ഥാനാം രചയിത, ദ്വാത്രിംശേ മുനിരഭ്യഗാത്, ദ്വാത്രിംശേ വയസി സമാധി, ചതുർഷു ദിക്ഷു ചതുർണാം ആമ്നായ മഠാനാം സ്ഥാപനേന ഷൺമത പ്രതിഷ്ഠാപനേന ഏവമേവ ഭാഷ്യപ്രകരണ സ്തോത്ര ഗ്രന്ഥാനാം രചനയ ഭാരതേ സർവത്ര പദയാത്രയ കാശ്മീരെ സർവജ്ഞപീഠ ആരോഹണേന ശങ്കര സ്വയം ശങ്കര ഇതി സമുദഘോഷയദയം ഭഗവത്പാദ. അദ്യ ശ്രീശങ്കര ജയന്തി സമാചരണം വിശ്വേ സർവത്ര. कान्तळूर् शाला कान्तळूर् शाला इति इयं शोधसंस्था तिरुवनन्तपुरं केन्द्रीकृत्य आभारतं विभिन्नान् अध्ययन अध्यापन प्रचारकार्यक्रमान् आयोजयन्ति संस्कृतक्षेत्रे देदीप्यमाना विराजते। न केवलं भारते विश्वे सर्वत्र इति वक्तव्यं भवति। यतः विश्वसंस्कृतसम्मेलने अपि कान्तळूर् शालायाः सान्निध्यमासीत्। अहं तु मम दायित्वं प्रविशामि। स्वागत भाषणं श्रीशंकर जयंती समाचरण वेलायाम् अस्मिन् मेलने अध्यक्षपदम् अलङ्कुर्वन्ति मम गुरुवराः, प्रेरणाप्रदायकाः, मार्गप्रदर्शकाः, महान्तः विद्वांसः प्रोफेसर पी.सी. मुरली माधवन महाभागाः। ये अस्याः कान्तळूर् संस्थायाः स्थापक निदेशकाः वर्तन्ते। विश्वविश्रुताः एते पण्डितप्रवराः शालाम् इमां वैश्विकस्तरे प्रतिष्ठापयितुम् अहोरात्रं कार्यनिरताः वर्तन्ते। तेभ्यः गुरुवर्येभ्यः कान्तळूर् शाला पक्षतः भवतां सर्वेषामपि पक्षतः स्वागतं व्याहरामि। अत्र अनुग्रहभाषणेन अस्मान् अनुगृह्णन्ति श्रीचरणाः पुष्पाञ्जलि स्वामियार् इति प्रथितयशसः वेदांत विद्या धुरन्धराः भागवत अमृतपान प्रमत्ताः आदरणीयाः नडुविल्मठं स्वामिनः अच्युत भारती तीर्थपादाः। ते तु अस्मच्छालायाः कान्तळूर् शालायाः मुख्य संरक्षकाः अपि वर्तन्ते। स्वामिपादानां चरणकमलयोः प्रणम्य स्वागतकुसुमानि वितनोमि। स्वागतं स्वागतं। श्रीशंकर अंतर्देशीय प्रभाषणेन अद्य अस्मान् अनुगृह्णन्ति तत्त्वमयानंद स्वामी चरणाः। परिव्राजकाः इदानीं तु प्रायः बहुवर्षेभ्यः विदेशे एव सेवानिरताः। अमेरिका देशे कैलिफोर्निया वेदांत सोसैटी निदेशकाः स्वीयाम् आध्यात्मिकीं सेवां तपस्यां च आचरन्ति। स्वामिनः अत्र अद्य शंकराचार्याणाम् एकात्मता दर्शनं कथं सामूहिक समरसतायै तथा विश्वशान्ति च मूलशिला भवति इति अस्मान् बोधयन्ति। तेभ्यः स्वामिपादेभ्यः स्वागत कुसुमानि समर्पयामि। चर्चायाः समारम्भकत्वेन उपस्थिताः वर्तन्ते। इदानीं तु इळयतमाश् अत्र उपस्थिताः सन्ति वा?
No. Join क्रियते झटित्येव
अस्तु अस्तु अत्र स्वामिचरणानां विषय उपस्थापनात् परं चर्चा भवति। चर्चायाः समारम्भकत्वेन उपस्थिताः भविष्यन्ति डॉक्टर के.के. इळेदु महाभागाः, वेदांत आचार्याः तथा अडयार् ग्रन्थशाला शोध केन्द्रस्य भूतपूर्व निदेशकाः, तेभ्यः गुरुवर्येभ्यः अपि कान्तलूर् शालायाः पक्षतः स्वागतं व्याहरामि। धन्यवादार्पणार्थम् उपस्थितः कान्तलूर् शालायाः कार्यदर्शी वासुदेव विलासम् आयुर्वेद संस्थायाः मुख्य प्रबन्धकः, अत्यन्तं विश्रुतः आयुर्वेद भिषग्वरः डॉक्टर प्रदीप ज्योति महाशयः, डॉक्टर प्रदीप ज्योति महाभागाय अपि औपचारिकतया स्वागतं व्याहरामि। अन्ते शान्तिपाठं पठति शास्त्रज्ञः संस्कृताभिमानी उन्निकृष्णन् महाभागः। उन्निकृष्णन् महाशयाय अपि स्वागतं व्याहरामि। प्रथमं वयं वेदप्रार्थनां वेदपाठं वयं श्रुतवन्तः प्रार्थनारूपेण। अत्र वेदमन्त्रोच्चारणेन अस्मान् धन्यान् कृतवान् वेदज्ञः ब्रह्मस्वं मठस्य कार्यदर्शी ब्रह्मश्री मुल्लमङ्गलं नारायणं नम्बूदिरी महाभागः। यद्यपि प्रार्थना कृता तथापि तस्मै अपि स्वागतं व्याहरामि।
Now, this is the time for presidential address. Since our audience, they are participating from different places and they are not very much aware about Sanskrit language, follow it. But that's why we have preferred the medium, English medium. But some lectures will be in Sanskrit also. Now, as the president of the Kantaloor Sala, the director of the Kantaloor Sala, I will deliver my presidential address for a few minutes. Then our chief patron, Swami Achyuta Bharati Pushpanjali Swami will perform the Anugraha Prabhashana, that is benedictory address. Shrutismriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Pada Shankaram Loka Shankaram Sadashiva Samarambham Shankarācārya Madhyamam Asmadācārya Paryantām Vande Guru Paramparam. As Dr. Unnikrishnan has told in the welcome speech, today we are celebrating the Kantaloor Sala, the research institute in Vedic and Vedantic studies. We are celebrating the Śaṅkara Jayanti celebration, Śaṅkara Jayanti. And regarding the Kantaloor Sala, it has started in 2020. Now 5 years are over. The Kantaloor Sala is the institute, is the first phase of the revival of Kantaloor University, which the erstwhile university in Kerala. And the second stage will be its performance as a deemed university, and gradually it will be upgraded to a central Vedic University. So in the first phase, for more than 4 or 5 years, we have conducted several very meaningful academic programs which are available in the YouTube and in our website of Kantaloor Sala. This is the second lecture on Shankara, named after Shankara, the International Śrīśaṅkara lecture. The first one is delivered by Professor Arindam Chakravarti, the well-known international philosopher. He delivered the talk on Advaita Vedanta, how Kashmir and Kerala is being connected with the Advaita Vedanta. The Advaita Vedanta of Shankara went from here to Kashmir, and from Kashmir, the Advaita philosophy, Shaiva Advaita of Abhinavagupta came here in Kerala. So this was the topic of Professor Arindam Chakravarti. Now, we are having an entirely different topic today, mainly related to Advaita Vedanta, how Shankara philosophy is instrumental, is the main cause for the world peace, the cultural harmony and peace of the world. This is the what we call the most burning issue for us in the world itself. We know that very well, that the world, the nations, they are fighting each other, and very burning situation we have. That's why we have selected this topic for discussion. Actually, Jagadguru Adi Shankaracharya, the highest intellectual the world has ever produced, was unique in the history of thought, as he combined in himself the best qualities of a poet, a philosopher, a logician, Sahridaya, devotee, mystic, interpreter, commentator, and a religious reformer. He was the architect of the monastic system of philosophy, and hence that system of thought is named after him. The popularity and recognition of this system of Indian metaphysics went to the extent of using the word Vedanta as a synonym of Advaita Vedanta, or better known, Shankara Vedanta. Shankara never refuted totally any of the doctrines preached by his predecessors, but he denied the ultimate reality of these doctrines. All the other systems of Indian philosophy were given the status of upaya, that is the cause for the, or the what we call the karana for the ultimate karya is supposed to be, which is the Advaita Vedanta. So he was the most, the upaya was Advaita Vedanta. All other Indian systems are upayas. He is the ascetic of ascetic, the philosopher of philosophers, the poet of poets, the reformer of reformers, the commentator of commentators, the Acharya Shankara, the Acharya of Acharyas. Shankara throws behind him all rishis and philosophers of the world. Actually, he lived only 32 years, but he scored he scored centuries, and even now he is scoring centuries. That is why the great tribute by Madhusudana Saraswati, the great Vedantin, in that Shankara line of Advaita, Nastaumitam Vyasam Asheshamartham Samyangna Sutrairabiyo Babandha Vinapitaihi Sangradhidakhilartham Śrīśaṅkaram Naumi Sureshwaram Cha. Here, actually, what is the crux of the Advaita Vedanta? What is the crux of the Shankara Advaita? The entire universe consists of two categories, Kshetra and Kshetrajna, the inanimate and animate. Kshatrajna is Jiva. All his activities have the single purpose of getting happiness and avoiding grief. He does not always succeed. On the other hand, he gets inescapably enmeshed in the web created by himself. Shastra says that his basic error is that he considers himself to be the body and searches for happiness outside him, even though, in fact, he is actually bliss himself. That he does not know, this is his avidya, and mistaking the body for himself is his abhyasa, adhyasa. How I am not a body? In deep sleep, that is in sushupti, you have no connection with the body, etc. You enjoy your own natural bliss in deep sleep. There is a saying in Vedanta text, Sukhamaham aswapsam nakinjida vedisham. It is natural. Why do I miss this while awake? While awake, I am missing this ananda. It is because you commit the mistake of considering yourself as the body. Why do I commit this mistake? It is because you do not know who you are and when you are totally free from the body, etc. Then who am I? The question from Shishya. You are Brahman. The answer of Guru is you are Brahman. Shankara in his Ekashloki, this one verse, establishes the truth of difference between Kshetra and Kshetrajna. It is, the sloka goes like this: Kim Jodistava Bhanumanahanime Ratrau Pratipadikam Syadevam Revideepa Darshana Vidhau Kim Jodirakhahime Chakshu Tasya Nimilanadisavaye Kim He Diyo Darshane Kim Tatraha Mato Bhavan Paramagam Jodistadasmi Prabhu. So, it is the complete, the Kshetra and Kshetrajna, the theory has been what we call, put it in this sloka with a full, the entire Vedantic thought has been well preserved in this sloka. Now, today's topic, what Swami, His Holiness Swami Tattwamayananda Ji, what he is going to speak, that is the social harmony and peace through Advaita, Shankara Advaita. Social harmony, peace, and national integration. Or why you speak national integration, it can be universal integration. No wonder the burning issue, this is the burning issue today at a global level, at least in the context of India, perhaps. India comprises of multilingual, multiracial, multi-religious, and multi-ethnic groups of individuals. And at the same time, those individuals somehow or other belong to India as its bona fide citizens. Because of so much diversity, the conflict and disharmony do arise frequently in different sectors and parts of the country, and those, of course, stand as grave challenge to the very integrity of the, not only as a political unit, but also as far as its national as well as cultural integrity are taken into account. Here a question may be raised as to how or how far the traditional religio-philosophical outlook which this country presents since antiquity is in any sense conducive in sustaining the spirit of social harmony, peace, and national integration. Or to put in a pinpoint manner, whether Advaita philosophy of value is compatible with the idea of national integration beyond any point of controversy. Swami Tattwamayananda Ji, a well-known scholar from the order of Ramakrishna Mission, who is chairing the Vedantic Society, the minister of Vedantic Society of North California, a well-known Vedantin, a well-known orator, a well-known what we call scholar in Sanskrit in several ways. He has written a lot on Vedanta and other Indian systems of philosophy. So now we are going to hear him. There is no need of description about his speech and other things. So with great pleasure and with great pride and privilege, we got His Holiness Swami Tattwamayananda ji in our midst today to talk on Shankara Advaita, and how it becomes instrumental to social harmony and peace in the world. Now, I beg to remain. Now, I invite Adhuna Maya Amandrite Pushpanjali Swamiyar iti Aparanamadheya Naduvil Matham Śrīśaṅkara Mathasya Adhyakshabhutah Swami Achyuta Bharati Mahodayaha Purtirthapadaha Pujyapadaha Atra Sughiya Anugraha Bhashanaya Amandrite Maya.
चिराय धातुर्वदनप्यनर्तकी सरस्वती यद्रसनाग्रनर्तनाद् अभोभवीदेधितकीर्तिरत्र सा जगद्गुरुं तं यदि वर्यमाश्रये. लोक शङ्करणाय कृतावताराणाम् आचार्यपादानां जन्मदिनं भवति इदमिति दिनमिदं सुदिनं मन्ये. पूर्वसुकृतेन ये अत्र समागताः आचार्याणां जन्म कर्म अनुस्मरणाय ततस्ततः अत्र मिलितान् भवताः परं धन्यान् मन्ये. दुःख निवृत्तेः सुख अवाप्तेः च उपायः वेदान्तेषु अथवा उपनिषत्सु सम्यक् प्रतिपादितः. वेदवाक्यत्वात् प्रायो दुर्ग्रहः. एतत्परिहाराय कृष्णद्वैपायनेन भगवता व्यासेन वेदोक्त तत्त्वानि समाहृत्य एको विशिष्टः ग्रन्थः निर्मितः. चतुराध्यायी इति तस्य नाम. सूत्रात्मकत्वात् हन्ता अयमपि दुर्ग्रहः. शङ्कर भगवत्पादाः अत्र अवतीर्य वेदान्तसूत्राणां तथा उपनिषदां सर्ववेदान्तसाररूपायाः भगवद्गीतायाः च उपरि प्रसन्नगम्भीरं सर्वसन्देहनिवारकम् एकं भाष्यं कृतवन्तः आचार्याः. एवं भाष्यं निर्माय शारीरकभाष्यं निर्माय लोकगुरुः सञ्जातः. गुरोरनुग्रहेणैव पुमान् पूर्णः प्रशान्तये इति भागवतवचनात् गुरोरनुग्रहः एव सुखाय मार्गः, न अन्यः पन्था विद्यते। अतः गुरुदक्षिणां समर्प्य गुरोरनुग्रहः सम्पादनीयः। कथं गुरुदक्षिणा कर्तव्या इति चेत् आचार्यैः कृतानां लघूनां बृहतां च ग्रन्थानाम् अभ्यसनमेव गुरुदक्षिणा। एवं गुरुपादानां ग्रन्थानाम् अभ्यसनं कृत्वा अधीतिबोध आचरण प्रचारणादिकं कृत्वा सर्वे सुखिनः भवन्तु इत्येवम् उक्त्वा विरमामि। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः।
धन्यवादाः। वयम् अनुगृहीताः स्म। स्वामिपादानाम् अनुग्रहवाक्यैः वयम् अनुगृहीताः स्म। अधुना now we are going to hear the immemorable lecture by His Holiness Swami Tattwamayananda ji from Ramakrishna order. For a long time he was the main teacher of Vedanta at Belur Mutt. In several mathams he has worked, he has served. But at present, for a few years, as Professor Unnikrishna has told, Swamiji is serving the humanity at America, at California, and he is the minister of Vedanta Society of North California. I, with folded hands, with my pranams, I request His Holiness Swami Tattwamayananda ji to deliver the international Śrīśaṅkara lecture of Kantaloor Sala. The topic is ЩАНКARāCārya and Vision of Oneness, Foundation for Social Harmony and Global Peace. Now, His Holiness Swami Tattwamayananda ji.
ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादशङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। It's a great privilege, a matter of great joy to see some of you on the Zoom screen. And most of you are quite familiar with me, and I'm very happy to see some of you once again after many years. And thank you for that introduction, Professor Murali Madhavan. The topic is very interesting, ЩАНКARāCārya and the vision of oneness, foundations for social harmony and global peace. And to begin with, thank you for this invitation. I'm very happy delighted to share some of my thoughts and reflections on the life and the work of one of the greatest personalities the world has ever seen. His work is almost incomparable. ЩАНКARāCārya did so much. He wrote so much. He traveled a lot. His contributions are still inspiring humanity, the idea of universal oneness and global harmony, which can be found echoed throughout his writings, commentaries, stotras, and other books. So Can you hear me properly?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we can hear.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very, very clear, very clear.
No. There are many areas in which we can elaborate on this subject. As I mentioned, he wrote so much. So it's very hard to know where to start. But I shall start somewhere which is historically very important. One of the most immemorable, one of the most incomparable summarizations of Shankaracharya's work and personality could be found in the writings of Sister Nivedita. She was Miss Margaret Noble, born in Ireland. She was the disciple of, maybe the greatest Western disciple of Swami Vivekananda, who, by the way, is responsible for introducing Shankaracharya's Advaita on a global stage. Today, I'm speaking to you from Northern California in the United States, and we're talking about Shankaracharya's work because it was Vivekananda in 1893 who brought Shankaracharya's own philosophy, almost 1200 years after Shankaracharya's passing away. That philosophy was introduced to the Western world by Swami Vivekananda. And just a few words about what she said about Shankaracharya's personality and work. And there are many statements, many evaluations of Shankaracharya's personality and work through Radhakrishnan, K.M. Munshi, Mahatma Gandhi, and many others. But this is perhaps the most memorable evaluation. I'm just quoting from Sister Nivedita's The Web of Indian Life, a very well-known book, not a very large book. She begins, Western people can hardly imagine a personality such as that of Shankaracharya. In the course of so few years, they have nominated the founders of no less than 10 great monastic orders, of which 4 have fully retained their prestige to the present day. Think of this person. He founded 10 monastic orders. Today, if you go to India, if you go to Uttarakhand, if you go to Haridwar, you cannot find a single monk who doesn't belong to one of the 10 monastic orders that he founded. Swami Chinmayananda, Chinmaya Mission, Saraswati order. And this Swamiji Bharati order. Shankaracharya again Bharati order. We also belong to Puri order. There is not one monk, including remember, Madhvacharya, who was not very kind in his response to Shankaracharya's Advaita. He also belonged to Tirtha Sampradaya, Madhvacharya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whose followers do not accept Shankaracharya, he also belonged to Bharati order. Kesava Bharati was the sannyasa guru of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's the extent of the work and influence of Shankaracharya. So I'm coming back to Sister Nivedita. Remember, she was not a Sanskrit educated Sanskrit Pandit. She was not familiar with Vedas, and she was born in Ireland. She was a revolutionary, a firebrand Irish revolutionary, an education reformer who was highly influenced by Pestalozzi and Froebel, who happened to listen to Vivekananda, came to India, stayed and passed away. And her understanding of Shankaracharya and his philosophy was only second-hand. She says, there's no greater person than Shankaracharya the world has ever seen. Now, she continues, to have acquired such a mass of Sanskrit learning as to create a distinct philosophy and impress himself on the scholarly imagination of India in a preeminence that 1200 years have not sufficed to shake. Shankaracharya continues to live and inspire all of us 1200 years after his passing away. And mind you, there are many scholars who will tell you that Shankaracharya is born maybe in 2nd century AD, even 5th century BC, and so on. I'm not going to those subjects, like controversial subjects, are still being debated. I still believe Shankaracharya apparently was born in 770 AD and passed away in 810, 32 years. To have written poems whose grandeur makes them unmistakable. Remember, 93 poetic classics, 93. That's the extent of his work. And again, to have written so many poetical classics, whose grandeur makes them unmistakable, even to the foreign and unlearned ear. Sriniveda did not know Sanskrit. She must have listened to Sanskrit poems written by Shankaracharya, recited by her guru Vivekananda, and that inspired her. That's why she's writing like this. At the same time, to have lived with his disciples in all the radiance, joy, and simple pathos of the saints, this is a greatness that we may appreciate but can never understand. Sister Nivedan Shankaracharya says, this is a greatness that we can only appreciate from a distance but can never understand. And she continues, we contemplate with wonder and delight the devotion of Francis of Assisi, the intellect of Abelard, the force and freedom of Martin Luther, and the political efficiency of Ignatius Loyola. But who could imagine all this united in one person? So you can imagine the greatest theologian, philosopher, poet, saint, system builder, organizer of no less than 10 monastic orders, institution builder. Remember, 54 philosophical classics, including 12 commentaries, including Shvedasudhara, the Upanishad, Gita, and Brahma Sutra, and Shvedasudhara. And of course, there are other minor Upanishads also. 91 or 93 poetic classics, 4 monasteries in 4 distant corners of India, right across the Bangladesh border, Tripureswari temple, and it was found that Shankaracharya statue were discovered and excavated in Afghanistan. And then traveling all over India 4 times, 778 AD to 810, Ashtavashe Chadurvedi, Dwadashe Sarvashastravit, Shodase Kritavan Bhashyam, Dvatrimse Munihi Abhyagap. This is the story of Shankaracharya. Now, a few more things I would like to mention. One of the reasons why Shankaracharya is recognized as a unique personality is the amount of the immense work that he did. Now, he became a monk when he was 8 years old, traveled, of course, when he was just between 6 and 7, according to Vidyaranya's Shankara Digvijaya. He traveled to Omkareshwar, met his Guru Govinda Bhagavapada, studied, Mr. already Ashtavas Chadurvedi, already completed 4 Vedas much earlier. And then he, before 16th year, he had written all the great commentaries, which today's Sanskrit Pandits spent 40 years, 50 years, 35 years to study and understand and discuss, do, Bhakyartha. And it's all written by a boy who was going to 12th grade school, remember. All the Pandits today who are discussing and studying Shankara Bhashya, so remember, they're studying the works of somebody who wrote all these books before he turned 16th year. And the same Shankaracharya was recognized even when he was a small little boy living in Kaladi. Kaladi in Malayalam means footstep. And that is the instrument that he used to travel all over India 4 times. 8th century. Long before these roads were, even walking roads pathways were developed. That was he used to travel through forests, through rivers, trees and mountains and so on. But that Shankaracharya was also recognized even when he was a small boy living in Kaladi. So according to Vidyaranya's Shankara Digvijaya, there's a very interesting scene where King Rajashekara, who was the king of Tiruvanchikulam, Sera king, who came to Kaladi, and he had written 3 dramas, plays, which he wanted to be corrected by Shankaracharya. So he says, Tena Prishta Kushala Kshidipalaha, Svena Suthamada Shatravakalaha, Katagayuda Samarpana Purvagam, Nadagatrayam Avochit Apurvam. It comes in the Shankar Digvijaya. Even as a small boy, Shankaracharya was recognized for his greatness by the local king, who came and who wanted Shankaracharya, the little boy, to correct his Sanskrit dramas. I would say a few things about the philosophical landscape of Shankaracharya's times. That is a time when India was going through a very difficult period. If you look at the philosophical spiritual evolution of India, you can see 24 centuries of this evolution taking place, right from 6th century BC up to 19th century AD. For 24 centuries, 2,400 years. And Shankaracharya stands right in the middle. From Buddha 6th century to Shankara 8th century AD, 6th century BC to 8th century AD. Remember? And then Vivekananda 19th century. Now you find, if you look at Shankaracharya's work, you find he was a far greater revolutionary than even Karl Marx. Because when he came, what is the philosophical landscape in India? There were philosophers who said God did not exist. Those who denied the authenticity of the Vedas, not only Sankhyas and Vaisheshikas, who of course belong to the Astika Sampradaya, Bauddhas, Sautrantikas, Vaibhashikas, Shunyavadis, Vijnanavadis, and Charvakas, and Jainas, Syadvada, all these Kapalikas, and all other philosophical speculations, they were threatening India's cultural, spiritual unity. And then came Shankara. And what he did, he wrote he was the one who actually gave a philosophy to the Vedas. If you look at the history of Vedic hermeneutics, you find, before Shankaracharya came, even the Mahavakyas were interpreted by Purvamimamsakas, Jaimini, Shabara, and others, as Arthavadas. Aham Brahmasmi means I will Yajamana. Aham means Yajamana. Yajamana will Devata Prapti. Aham Brahmasmi is the greatest statement in Sanskrit language, in Upanishad literature, which means the highest Anubhuti Vakya. Tattvamasi is Upadesha Vakya. Aham Brahmasmi is Anubhuti Vakya. Prajnanam Brahma, Ayam Atma Brahma Siddhanta Vakya and Lakshana Vakyas. Now, before Shankaracharya came, Vedas did not have a philosophy. Excuse me for saying this. It did not have a metaphysical system. See, let us think of the hermeneutical heritage of Vedic literature. Skanda Swami, 7th century. Vaidya Nikhandu, around the same time. Then Yaska's Nirukta. These are some of the books which were written apparently to interpret the Vedas. Yaska Nirukta, Devo Danadva, Jyotanava, Deepanova, Disthanova, Bhavati. That's the interpretation of Deva Shabda. And all these Purvamimamsakas, they interpreted the most metaphysical, the most philosophical statements of Vedic literature in terms of rituals, either Arthavada or Upasana. Most of the great Vedantic statements, Mahavakyas and Upamahavakyas, found in the Upanishad literature, were interpreted by Purvamimamsakas in terms of rituals. Either Aham Brahmasmi iti Upasida, Tattvamasi iti Upasida. You can find the Purvapakshas between Vrtigaras, Bodhayana and others. Even in the Brahma Sutras also you find. They were struggling to deny a philosophical, metaphysical meaning for Vedantic statements. It was Shankaracharya who said that no, Vedas are not meant for rituals only. Before Shankaracharya, people thought Vedic statements are meant only for householders. Darakni sahitam karma. Nityanam karmanam phalam moksha. This is only Arthavada. This is the view of Purvamimamsakas. So what it means is, if you don't give importance to the philosophical statements of the Upanishads, and if you interpret Vedas only in terms of yajnas and yagas, then Vedas will become a very empirical philosophy, very worldly philosophy, putrakameshti, devo danadva, etc. Rituals meant for long life, money, putrakameshti, varuna yajna. for rivers, for rains, for grains, for reputation. For this purpose, you go on performing Bhuyasa Sharada Sada, Bruyama Sharada Sada, etc. So what happened was, actually, Vedas got a philosophy only from Shankaracharya. And then another important thing, his bhashyas. He wrote bhashyas for Isha, Kena, Katha, Prasna, Munda, Mandukya, Taittiriya, Chandogya, Brihadaranyaka, and so on. And Lagu Bhashyani, Bhashya Vivaranani, etc. He also wrote Brahma Sutra Bhashya. And I would say things about Brahma Sutra Bhashya, which incidentally I'm doing Brahma Sutra Bhashya interpretation through YouTube for Ramakrishna Mission monks online. Just began about 2 months ago. We are right now only in the 7th Adhikaran, I suppose. The point is, if you study Brahma Sutra, you find after Shankaracharya wrote Brahma Sutra Bhashya, all the earlier works on Brahma Sutras almost disappeared. Because after his work, people did not find that any other interpretation of Brahma Sutra will be of any value, either Upavasha, Odhayana, and others. They completely disappeared from popular attention. And then, if you think that was just a philosopher, it's not enough. He was also a great devotee. Historically, the first person to mention that the highest devotion and the highest jnanam, highest spiritual knowledge are the same, it was Shankaracharya. You can find Sri Ramakrishna also repeats the same idea in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. In the Gita Bhashya, you find Maicha Ananya Yogena Bhakti Avibhijarini Vikta Desha Sevitum Anabhirjana Samsati. In the Bhashya, Bhashyakara says that, well, the highest devotion, the highest jnanam are the same. Maicha Ishwari Ananya Yogena Apradak Samadhina Na Anyo Bhagavato Vasudevat Parahasti Ataha Sa Eva No Giti Itevam Nishchida Abhibijarini Buddhi Ananya Yogaha Tena Bhajanam Bhakti Na Vibhisharna Sila Abhibijarini Sacha Jnanam. The highest devotion and the highest jnanam are the same. Sometimes when I used to teach some of these subjects, I used to mention Ramanujacharya got terribly disturbed when his guru was teaching him this Chandogya Upanishad Bhashya. Also, Madhvacharya got disturbed when he was studying Advaita, because he thought there was no bhakti in Advaita. If Ramanujacharya could have just walked into Kanchi temple, Kamakshi temple, you would find a priest chanting Saundarya Lahari, Ananda Lahari. Who has written more inspiring devotional poems than Shankaracharya? None of the Bhakti Acharyas could write anything comparable to the great devotional poets of Shankaracharya. If you just listened online, Saundarya Lahari, Ananda Lahari, you'll be transported to this spiritual place. So again, as I mentioned earlier, none of the great Bhakti Acharyas could write anything comparable to the great devotional points of Shankaracharya. So that's why he said, and another great contribution, he said that every grihastha in his home should practice these devotional rituals. That's called Panchadevata Puja. Adityam Vigam Vishnum Gananatham Maheswaram Pancha Yajna Paro Nityam Grihastha Pancha Puja. See, in the Vedas, there are so many deities, both male deities and female deities. Shankaracharya, he integrated all these deities. The entire Vedic pantheon was organized into a small unit. And one should visit temples, but also practice in their homes puja and rituals on Devi, Vishnu, Gananatha, Ganapati, Shiva, and Aditya, Panchadevata Puja. So, if you think Advaita is like PhD in Vedantic education, Shankaracharya not only built a university for PhD scholars, he also started a kindergarten for kids, babies, children going to kindergarten. So if you cannot practice Advaita, you sit in your home, go to your shrine and practice your rituals. Who has done such a incomparable, immeasurable amount of work for Hinduism? Again, there were so many traditions and sampradayas, so many monks and householders, monks both, belonging to innumerable sampradayas in India when he was living in 8th century. So he established Shanmada, these 6 schools, Shaivam cha Vaishnavam Shaktam, Sauram Vainayagam Tatha, Skantam cha Bhakti Margasya Darshanani Shadevahi. He organized entire Indian philosophy, Indian spirituality under these 6 schools of philosophy and 6 sampradayas. So, if you just think of the other non-Advaitic Vedantins, just like Ramanuja, Madhva, Nimbarka, Vallabha, Achintya Bheda Vedanta, so you find that many of them got a clue as to how to interpret the philosophical, spiritual portions of the Vedic literature, taking an example from Shankara. You should remember statements like Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, or in the Chandogya Upanishad, Narada Sanat Kumara Samvada in Vak Eva. None of these statements would have meant anything if you read Shabara, Jaimini, and others, or pre-Shankarite, Purvamimamsa interpretation of Vedas. Of course, remember, there was not a single comprehensive bhashya on the entire 4 Vedas before Sayana came. And Sayana literally followed Shankaracharya's own method of interpretation. To give an example, one mantra in Munduka Upanishad, which is Atharvavedya Upanishad, comes from Atharvaveda. Dva Suparna Soija Sakhaya Samanam Vriksham Parishusajadi Tayoranya Pippalam Swadati Anasnan Anyo Abhichakasiti. This mantra, when Sayana interpreted, Sayana was of course a follower of Shankaracharya tradition who lived in, I think, 13th century, 12th, 13th century AD. He literally follows Shankaracharya's own interpretation. But similar statements, when they were interpreted by pre-Shankarite ritualists, Mimamsakas, they did not have any philosophical meaning. In Shankara Bhashya, on Sayana's commentary, you find, that bird sitting above represents Paramatma, and the bird sitting below eating fruits, sometimes bitter, sometimes sweet, represent Jiva, Samsari Jiva. The evolution of some Jiva towards Jiva Brahmaikya, that is the symbolism here. Such ideas never occurred to any of the pre-Shankarite interpreters of Vedanta. So when Ramanuja followed Bodhayana Vritti, that is Kratakodi, and wrote Sribhashya, he was literally following the path of Shankara, because Bodhayana Vritti had disappeared almost completely. But the method of writing Bhashya on Brahma Sutras or in the Upanishads, Upanishad Bhashya is written by followers of Madhvacharya and others. They were all following the footsteps of Shankara. Shankara had written a freeway, highway, and others just tried to follow that highway. That's all. Their interpretations were different, but the example was set down by Shankaracharya. Again, I'm coming to another very interesting subject, that is monks like me. Before Shankara, sannyasa ideal was not meant for anyone other than an household, a grihastha, who has already gone through Brahmacharya-asrama, then grihastha-asrama and vanaprastha-asrama, then sannyasa. So all the pre-Shankarite Vedantins, they followed the teachings of smrtis. The idea that one can take to sannyasa, and this is very important and philosophical point. We got a Vivekananda because there was a ŚRīśaṅkara. We got a Chinmayananda because there was a ŚRīśaṅkara. And all of us, we could become monks because ŚRīśaṅkara, he emphasized the point, Brahmacharyadva, Grihadva, Vanadva, id akhareva virajit, tad akhareva pravarajit. He refers to this statement in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya. Because according to pre-Shankarite Vedantins, the brahmacharis have no right to become sannyasi. Brahma Sutra Bhashya clearly mentioned, Nahi vayovastha visheshaka sannyasasya vidau suyate. You see, Shankaracharya says, there is no condition, there is no tradition that sannyasa is possible and allowed only for old people. So, yadahreva virajit tadahre pravrajit. It is Srutehi. Bhashyakara says, it's from the Jabala Smriti. It is mentioned in other Smritis also. Yadahreva virajit tadahreva pravrajit. Idi Srutehi, Bhashyakara says. He's actually belonging to the some of the ancient Vedic statements like Vajra Sujiga Upanishad, Jabala Upanishad, Narada Parivrajyoga Upanishad, etc. And he clearly stated, Idahi Vairagyam Tada Eva Pravrajit. That comes in Jabala Upanishad. Brahmacharyadva, Grihadva, Vanadva, Id Akhareva Virajit Tadahreva Pravrajit, etc. According to Purvamimamsakas, sannyasa was only meant for those who cannot continue yajnas and yagas. So long as you're yavad jivam, juhuad. You should practice yajna and yaga as long as you are living. Sargakamo yajeda. But Bhashyakara makes a point. If you are a Sargakama, you can do yajna. But if you are not a Sargakama, then there is no need to force you to perform yajna. You cannot expect, let's say, aged people, high diabetics to eat chocolate candies. They will die. So, if you tell that every person should study the Vedas when Brahmacharya, then marry, and then become old, and then when you get old and sick and cannot perform Agnihotra every day, you could do sannyasa. That was the view of pre-Shankarite Mimamsa interpreters of Vedas. Shankaracārya values the entire system. This is, see, Manusmuri, Yasma Tayopyasramino, Jnanena Annena cha Anyokam, Grihasthe Naivadharinde Tasma Jesthasami Grihi. Jesthasama is Grihasthasama is Jesthasama, no doubt about it. Because Yasma Trayopyasramino, Jnanena Annena cha Anyokam, Grihasthe Naivadharinde Tasma Jesthasami Grihi. Jeshtha is Grihasthasama is Jesthasama, no doubt about it, because it's a Grihastha, father and mother, uncles, teachers, they are the ones who give you food and they are giving you education. Jnanena Annena, that is true. So this is an important pramana for pre-Shankarite philosophers. And Grihasthasu yada pasyet vali paridam atmanaha apatyasya apatyam tada aranyam samasi. Anyone who gets old, gray-haired, and the face getting wrinkled, you should, to the aranyam samasayit, you should take to forest, become vanaprastha, then sannyasa. So any person who tries to take sannyasa from Brahmacharya, he will be lost and he will be denying his own spiritual destiny. This would be Mimamsakas interpret. You can find a lot of Purvabhaksha Siddhanta arguments in Brihadaranyaka, so Brahma Sutra. Shankaracārya emphasized again and again, if you are a great aspirant of renunciation, then Brahmacharyadva, Grihadva, Vanadva, it akhareva virajit, tat akhareva praparjit. People do not always remember this. We got a Vivekananda who took sannyasa even as a brahmachari because of Shankara. All the great monks in India who took to sannyasa before marriage directly, that is because of Shankaracārya's great work. That's why I mentioned earlier he founded the Tsunami, 10 monastic orders. Sister Niveda mentioned Shankaracharya founded 10 monastic orders, and she mentions Ignatius Loyola, who founded only one monastic order, Jesuit order, Saint Dominican order, Saint Franciscan order, Shankara, 10 monastic orders. Giri, Puri, Bharati, Vanam, Parvat, Aranyam, Sagara, Asama, Saraswati, Tirtha, Parvata, etc. So I mentioned Madhvacharya, Takkadandava, all the, even Manimanjari is a very, very, I don't want to mention those books. No, Shankaracharya was a perfect gentleman. You don't find a single word or phrase in his bhashyas which is derogatory or polemical, dialectical, but not derogatory of other philosophers whom he refuted or maybe opposed. But you can find many non-Advaitin post-Shankara philosophers used very, very unpleasant language against Shankaracharya. But they also belong to Shankara Sampradaya. Madhvacharya, Vyasatirtha, Vaditirtha, Jayatirtha, all of them were sannyasis of Shankara Sampradaya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, today you find their followers are not very tolerant of Shankaracharya's Advaita. But their great teacher, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was a sannyasi belonging to Bharati Sampradaya. It was because the case of Bharati, who was the guru of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, sannyasi guru. That's the extent of this great man's work. And as I mentioned earlier, he was a perfect gentleman. I want to emphasize that point. Kabilasya Mahamuni, even when he opposes the Sankhya system, see, he considers Kabila as a Mahamuni. Edat Buddhena Bhashitam. So he says, when we've been referring to Buddha, he says, Buddhasya Paramartha Darshinaka. Shankaracharya was refuting Sautrantikas, Vaibhashikas, Vijnanavadins, Shunyavadins, and so on, Mahavainashika, Shunyavadins. At the same time, he was referring to Buddha as Buddhasya Mahadarshinaka. That is the extent of his statement here. So that's why he quoted again, Slovakardhena Pravakshami, Eduktam Gandhakodibihi, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva Napara. I want to say a few things about some misunderstanding, misconceptions about Shankara's Advaita before coming to the main topic here today, that is global peace. About global peace, I would mention one thing. In one of his commentaries, Bhashyakara, when commenting on an important sloga in the Gaudavada Karika, so Siddhanta Vyavasthasu Dvaitino Nishchida Dudam Parasparam Viruddhyante Taihi Ayam Na Viruddhyati. Here, Dvaita, by the word Dvaita, Bhashyakara means Sankhyas, because Madhvacharya was born almost 400 years after Shankara's passing. So Dvaita Siddhanta is not inferred here or mentioned or referred to here. So these Dvaitins, those who believe that their own belief is the only right belief, those who see differences, the difference between Jagat and Jiva and Ishvara and Jagat and different objects in Jagat, that is Idra Bheda, and also different souls, that's Idra Bheda, Panja Bheda Siddhanta. Those who believe in Bheda or differences, they Parasparam Viruddhante, they fight among themselves. Well, if you listen to Vivekananda's Chicago address, one great message that he gave the world was the concept of global oneness and unity. Spiritually, humanity is one family. There are differences. There are socio-anthropological differences between different religious traditions, cultures, nationalities, races, and so on. But if we look beyond and beneath these differences, we can see the underlying thread of harmony and unification, unity. Spiritually, humanity is one. Shankaracharya's bhashyas are an elaboration of the great idea from Mahabharata, that is Vasudha eva kudumbakam. That great idea. And frequently you find there are a lot of misunderstanding about Shankaracharya's concept of Maya, Mithya, Vyavaharika, Jagat, etc. I'm not going to those details, but I will like just a few things about that. So, see, very often the misunderstandings are due to the wrong concept, wrong interpretation of Shankaracharya's idea of Vyavaharika, Avidya, Maya, and Mithya. Very often, Vyavaharika is mistaken to be Asat. If you read the entire book of Saptavidha Anubhavuttivada of Ramanuja, it doesn't elaborate it systematically, but it comes out, it evolves out of the Krita, that is the early portion of the Sri Bhashya. So, that is Sutta Prakashika. That is a interpretation Bhashya on Sri Bhashya. This Saptavidha Anubhavati, Asya Anubhavati, Pramana Anubhavati, untenables, logically not acceptable. Asraya Anubhavati, Pramana, Tirodhana, Nivartaga, Nivritya, and so on. I'm not going to those details. And also you find strong words used by many other non-Advaitic writers with regard to Advaita. Advaita is sometimes called Mayavada. Advaita is often called Brahmavada. I'm coming to those subjects right now because it is directly linked to our subject here. This misunderstanding. Now, if you look at Advaita, what it tells you is this: everything in this world is changing. It is not absolutely unreal, but it's not absolutely real. To qualify for Paramartha Satta, it should be beyond all changes. It should remain the same without any change, the past, present, and future. And that doesn't happen to any of these worldly objects. Everything in the world is changing. Therefore, it is only Vyavaharika. But very often, in the writings of non-Advaitins, they interpret Shankara's Vyavaharika as Asat. If somebody tells you, I'm not sitting there, I'm not talking to you right now, you are not sitting there, the world doesn't exist, we are not talking, it will be absolutely craziness. What Shankara said was, all the worldly experiences, empirical experiences, they are relative. They have a beginning and they have an end. So they are within time. They are Trikala Athena, Shadvikara Athena. They are not Shadvikara Atita. Whatever is Shadvikara Atita is the only absolute reality. That is Brahman. Very often, the Vyavaharika is misunderstood or deliberately misinterpreted as Asat. And Asat means something that cannot even exist as an idea. For example, Sesabishana. If it is horns of a hare, it cannot exist, because if it is hair, it cannot have a horn. If there is horn, it cannot be hair. Vandhya Putra. If it is Vandhya, it cannot have a Putra. If there is a Putra, the mother cannot be Vandhya. So it cancels itself. That is Asat. Now, very often, what happens in the dialectical writings of many of these non-Advaitic interpreters, what happened was the Vyavaharika was misinterpreted as Asat, and also Mithya and Maya are also misinterpreted as Asat. Shankaracharya says that, Mahadbhuta Anirvachaniya Rupa, something that cannot be defined as existing in the empirical sense, because it will change. So in the absolute sense, it's not existing, but it's going to be different next minute. But at the same time, you cannot deny its reality, because right now it is existing in front of you. So it is not Asat, because it is there in front of you. But it's not Sat, because it will be something different next minute. Only that which remained the same without any change in the past, present, and future alone can be called Satta, Paramarthika Satta. And this world is not beyond changes. The world is changing every day. Every cell is changing. Everything is changing in this world. So it is not unreal in the absolute sense, but it's not real in the absolute sense. It is only relative. This is the real meaning of mithyatvam. I'm not going to details. So those who are interested, you can see the 5 definitions of mithyatvam taken from Padmapada's Panchapadika. That is Sadasata Nadhikarnatvam va mithyatvam. Then Panchapadika Vivarana, that is present Pradibannavado Traikalika Nisheda Priyogitvam va mithyatvam. Then Tattva that is Swasenishta Atyanta Abhava Priyogitvam va mithyatvam by Śrīśaṅkara. Ananda Bodha, again Sat Viviktatvam va mithyatvam. So all these definitions of mithyatvam, if you read, and also if you put Ramanuja's Saptavidha Vibhuti Vada, etc., you find the great misunderstanding. That is Maya, Mithya, Vyavaharika Satta, and Avidya were interpreted as Asat, absolute non-existence. So what happened was, there is a wrong notion that Advaita doesn't have this world. Advaita doesn't have anything to do with universal ethics. But I can tell you, there's a great statement in the commentary on Gaudavada Karika that they mentioned earlier. Susiddhanta Vyavasthasu Dvaitino Nishchidatudam Parasparam Viruddhinte Taihi Ayamna Viruddhiti. We cannot quarrel with anyone. Just as we cannot hit our own head with our own hand. We don't quarrel with our own hands and heads and eyes. We feel the pain ourselves. So we cannot hurt anyone without hurting ourselves. That is, hurting anyone else is hurting ourselves. Bhashyakara says, Taihi Anyona Virodhibihi Asmadiyoyam Vaidiko Dharma Na Viruddhiti Sarva Ananyatvat. Everyone is the same. No one is alien. No one is a stranger. Asmadiyoyam Vaidiko Dharma Na Viruddhiti Sarva Ananyatvat. Atmaigatva Darsana Paksho Na Viruddhiti. Atma is Eka. The world is one. Humanity is one spiritual family. Yada Sahastapadadibihi evam Ragadvesha Anaspadatvat Anatmaigatva Buddhireva Atmaigatva Buddhireva Samyak Darsanam iti Abhipraya. So Bhashyakara says Sarva Ananyatvat Atmaigatva Darsana Pakshaha. That is Advaita. Spiritually, the world is one. Spiritually, humanity is one. We cannot quarrel with anyone. Because just as we cannot hurt our own body without feeling the pain, we cannot do any harm to anyone in this world without eventually hurting ourselves. This is the spiritual unity and oneness of existence that Shankara gave to this world. If we can go back to Shankara, we can find this great inspiring message that the world is one, humanity is one, and we are not strangers. We don't hurt others because of fear of God, but because we don't hurt others, because by hurting others, we'll be hurting ourselves. We cannot do any harm to others without eventually doing harm to ourselves. It is a great philosophy of global peace and global harmony. If you look at the present scenario in the US, for example, I often mention this. Today, you cannot go to any educated university. You cannot address any educated audience and tell them that my religion is only true religion. Your religion is wrong. You cannot do that without being laughed at, without being ridiculed. You know the reason? Because Vivekananda in 1893 brought Shankarācārya's message to America. Before Vivekananda introduced Advaita philosophy in America, nobody knew that it is possible to live with other people with different cultures, different religious traditions, except as a formality. So interreligious dialogues got a philosophical meaning from this philosophy of universal ethics, a kind of spiritual humanism, universal spiritual humanism of unity. So if you look at Vivekananda's Chicago address, as mentioned earlier, ye yathamam prapadyante tam sadaiva bhajamiham mama varma anuvartante manushya partha sarvasya. Literally quotes this verse in Chicago address. It was that caught the attention of the people. And this is nothing but Advaita. You may follow any path you want, right or wrong, as you imagine. But if you are a sincere person and pray with a sincere heart, your prayers will be listened to by God, no matter what tradition you are born into, what language you speak, what book you read. Because spiritually, humanity is one. If we turn our attention, our prayers to God, he won't see the dividing line of races, cultures, nationalities, etc. He will listen to that. Because spiritually, the whole humanity, not only humanity, the entire creation is one. This is the greatness of Advaita. So today, as I mentioned earlier, you'll be ridiculed if you tell an educated audience, my religion is only the right religion, your religion is wrong, you're worshipping the devil, my God is the right God. People are doing that, but you cannot talk to educated people unless you want to be laughed at or ridiculed. And that's because Vivekananda brought this idea from India. And this idea was elaborated philosophically by Shankara in the 8th century AD. Sometimes we don't always remember. There are many people in India who consider Shankaracharya very orthodox. But actually, Shankaracharya was a far greater revolutionary. If you consider the great opposition he had to face against the established views of Purvamimamsakas and also Charvakas, Bauddhas and others. So I want to thank again this Kantaloor Sala for inviting me to give this talk. It requires much more time. I believe I have already taken more than allotted time. Just want to mention a few things like this. I mean, just to understand Shankara's greatness. This is an opportunity, a golden opportunity to remember the greatness of this great man. If you find Madhvacharya, Maya Vadam Asashastram Prachannam Bauddham Uchyate. Give an example. Again, Vedanta Desika in Sadadushani, Prachanna Bauddha Vishaye Parido Yadadhum. You should fight with this Prachanna Bauddha. Who are Prachanna Bauddhas? Shankara. You know why they call Shankara Prachanna Bauddha? Because Shankara taught Mayavada. And Shankara taught that world did not exist. World doesn't exist. That is the philosophy of Sautrantikas, Vaibhashikas, and Vijnanavadins especially. Vijnanavadins believe all external objects are unreal. That's Vijnana. Vijnanam alone exists. They completely deny the reality of external objects, Vijnanavadins. So very often you find many of the non-Shankarites terribly misunderstood the actual implication of Vyavaharika Satta as expounded by Shankara. Shankara himself, he was living in this world, working in this world, traveling in this world, teaching in this world, writing books. Did he think that this world is unreal? Why should he write books in this unreal world? Why should he? Just give an example. Chatusashti Pujari Puja Stotram. That's the most elaborate work on puja, upacharas. 64 upacharas. Normally we perform only Panchopachara, Dashopachara, Shodasopachara. Shankaracharya wrote quite classic on 64 upacharas. Usasi Mahagada just begins, or mother get up in the morning and so on. Ati Kribandra Katash Nirikshanaihi Jagadidam Jagadamba Sukhi Guru. Praise to Divine Mother in the morning, getting up. And then Arghya, Padya, Dhuba, Diba, Pushpa, Naivedya, and so on. A person who wrote the highest Vedanta philosophy, who also taught that the highest Vedanta philosophy is also the highest devotional philosophy. Maijanine Yoga, I already quote the 13th chapter, 10th verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Some 11th verse, part of Veda is there. But Shankaracharya says, The highest avibhijarini bhakti is also jnanam. Now, this was never understood by many of those who don't know Shankaracharya. That's why, even Bhaskara was perhaps almost a contemporary. He Veda Siddhanta. He says, Vigidam Vichinna Moolam, Mahayaniya Bauddhagadidam, Mayavadam Vyavarnayando Lokan Vyamohayanti. The Bhaskaracharya wrote in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya. This world is being deluded by Mayavadis. People call Shankara Mayavad. He was not a Mayavadi, he was a Brahmavadi. Mayavada is not the integral, not the most important element of Advaita Siddhanta at all. Brahman, that is, Jiva Brahmaivanapara is the last word. Before that, Brahma Satyam. Brahma Satyam and Jiva Brahmaivanapara. These are two important elements. Jagat Mithya is only incidental by implication. Jagat Mithyatvam is not the most important aspect of Shankara Vedanta. Brahma Satyam and Jiva Brahmaivanapara. These are two important elements of Shankara Vedanta. Without understanding this, you find even today, people often think that Vedanta or Advaita is some kind of a life-negating, world-negating, unrealistic philosophy. No, it is simple common sense. Advaita Vedanta of Shankara, on the one hand, the most metaphysical, profound metaphysical philosophy is also simple common sense. If you can live in this world, we can think that everything is happening is there, it is real, but then it is not absolutely real. He makes a very famous statement in the Gita Bhashya with a different language. Is also repeated in Mandrikarika Bhashya. Prag Brahmatma Vijnanat Sarva Loka Vyavaharanam Satyatva Buddhihi. Prag Prabodhasya, that is Prag Brahmatma Vijnanat Sarva Loka Vyavaharanam Satyatva Buddhihi. Yada Swapna Drishtasya Iva Prag Prabodhat. So remember, Prag Brahmatma Vijnanat, before Brahma Jnanam, before Jiva Brahma Ikya Anubhuti, Aham Brahmasmi Anubhuti, Sarva Loka Vyavaharanam Satyatva Buddhihi. It is logically correct to consider all these worldly activities as if it is real. As if it is real. Yatha Swapna Drishtasya Iva Prag Prabodhat. Prag Prabodhat Swapna Drishtasya Iva. Before you wake up, you think dream objects are real in dream. When you're dreaming, we don't think dream objects are unreal. When we wake up, come to the waking state, we look back, we think these dreams are all dreams, not real. Similarly, only those who have reached the highest Paramarthika Satta, at that stage, at that level only, you can say this world is unreal. When you're living this world, when you are interacting in this world, we are part of this world, we cannot say this world is unreal. Shankara did not say that. That's why after realization in Omkareshwar under his guru, he did not go to sleep saying that Jagat Mithya. He started working in this world for the good of the world. So it's very important. All the wrong notions about Shankaracharya, that he said the world is unreal, world is a dream, there is nothing to do in this world. All these wrong notions create a lot of misunderstanding about Shankara's and his philosophy. And hopefully and happily, I would say, Madhusudana Saraswati, in his Advaita Siddhi, and to some extent in the Gurartha Deepika, the commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, he tried to correct some of the misunderstandings while trying to refute the criticism of Vyasatirtha against the 4 definitions of Mithyatvam, rather 5 definitions from Panchapadika and Panchapadika Vivarana, Prakashatmayati, and also Tattvamadipika and Anandabodha. 2 definitions from Panchapadika Vivarana. One is Pradivannobadu Prayigalika Nisheda Prayogittumva Mithyatvam. Then Jnana Nivartittumva Mithyatvam. These are 2 definitions from Panchapadika Vivarana. So all these criticisms were refuted by Madhusudana, and we should be grateful to him also for reviving the original philosophy of Shankara with regard to bhakti. Actually, the credit for reviving Shankaracharya's bhakti ideal, the credit should go to Madhusudana Saraswati in Gujarati Bihar, because of the due to the dialectical confrontation between Vishishtadvaitins like Vedanta Desika, Sudarshana Suri, who wrote Sutta Prakashya, commentary on Sri Bhashya, and also Dvaitins like Vyasa and others, and also Advaitins like Sri Krishna wrote Kantana Kandagadi. So what happened was Brahmavada, that is Brahma Satyam, that idea was somewhat forgotten. Jagat Mithyatvam was overemphasized. As a result, Vedanta got this bad name, Advaita got the bad name, this Mayavada, which to some extent was responsible due to Prakasha, that is Swami Prakashananda, who wrote Vedanta Siddhanta Muktavali. Vedanta Siddhanta Muktavali is Prakashananda, not Prakasha Mayedi, who is the author of Panchapadya Vivarana, but Prakashananda, who wrote Vedanta Siddhanta Muktavali, in which he tried to answer this problem of misunderstanding by projecting Drishti Srishtivada. These are some of the intricate aspects of Advaita Vedanta, and I have tried my best to give some ideas of the uniqueness of Shankara Vedanta as a great paradigm for harmony, peace, and let's say reconciliation of different conflicting views in different areas, not only in philosophy but also in culture, tradition, values, and so on. It's a great opportunity for us to remember with great reverence the great contribution of Adi Shankaracharya. Thank you.
Thank you, Swami Tattwamayananda. Your wonderful scholarly presentation referring hundreds of books in Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, Dvaita Vedanta, Sankhya, and whatnot. Wider, what we call canvas, you have made to present the Vedantic ideas of Shankara. Now, this is the time for discussion, but even though we have only very limited time, we have only 10 minutes with us at disposal. I request one of our great Vedantins from Kerala, perhaps you may be knowing, Professor Kantaloor Sala, who is a product of Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda College, studied there, and he is a great Vedantin. I invite Professor Kantaloor Sala. I hope he had some problem today, so whether he has joined here or not, I could not see that. But if Professor Kantaloor Sala is available, I request with great regard to begin the discussion and have some observations on the lecture delivered by Tattwamayananda Swamiji.
I'm here. I'm sorry the gentleman you called on was not here, but it's an honor to participate. I have a very simple, short question for Swami Tattwamayananda, and that is, Swamiji, how do you see the special role of this unique university and its efforts, given that it's a historic revival of the great university connections of the past that inspired the world and drew people from around the world? You just spoke about global harmony. How does this effort in this time have the potential to combine these features you spoke of, the trans-empirical jnanam and the bhakti elements that were so essential to the universal message of Shankaracharya? How does this university have the ingredients to carry on this wonderful message?
Thank you, Bobby, for that question. So actually, the right person to answer your question is maybe Professor Murali Madhavan or some of those who are involved in this university. I'm not a part of that venture, but still a few words to begin with. I mentioned, I think any attempt to revive an ancient tradition, an ancient university, which has functioned as a great center of learning for many centuries in the past, which somehow disappeared over centuries, is a great attempt, and it can be an example because the world is in need of these great revivals of great ancient traditions. Maybe many of you may be aware that they're trying to revive Nalanda University, which is a great university that existed and which is responsible for preservation of Buddhist studies. Even and coming to Shankara, Shankaracārya refers to Dignaga. He was a Vijnanavadin. It's called the Yogacara school of Buddhism. And when Dignaga was teaching in Nalanda, the great Chinese pilgrim came. There were many Chinese students studying in Nalanda, and they were responsible for eventually taking some of the manuscripts from there and spreading Buddhism across the Himalayas. And then Dhammapala was the abbot of Nalanda just before Shankaracārya's time. He also was a great teacher. So, and during his time, it's reported there were hundreds of students from other countries studying in Nalanda. So during that time, in Chinese language, I'm told that there is a saying, you go to the West for wisdom. West for them means India. From China, India is the West, So that's a tradition. So I think this is a great example to be emulated in source of inspiration for other ancient centers of learning which have disappeared over centuries. So I think Professor Murali Madhavan will be happy to share his views in answer to Bobby Corman's question. Please, thank you.
Yes, Swamiji, you are rightly you have presented the replied the question. Actually, Professor's question is more relevant to or more concerned with the development of the revival of the Kantaloor Sala, the erstwhile university for Vedas and Vedantas. So this Kantaloor University was actually they started in the early centuries of the what we call after Christ, and it existed up to the 10th 11th century, up to that, and the university was very much I think I have to say something very categorically. I want to state something that the Vedas, Vedangas, and other darshanas were taught there thoroughly, and not simply that what we find nowadays in our states, in our Indian states, so to say. I am talking about that they teach only that text only, or that discipline only. But there in Kantaloor Sala, the teaching was interdisciplinary, or rather multidisciplinary it was. So in that way, the entire Vedic lore and Vedantas and Upanishads and other other darshanas, and even physical sciences, including ship technology, was there as one of the major subjects. So what I want to say that now we, as Swamiji has mentioned about Nalanda, even Nalanda and other erstwhile universities have referred the name of the erstwhile Nalanda, not the revived Nalanda, the erstwhile, the old Nalanda. That university has referred the name of Kantaloor Sala. such a and even Parthivapuram, the university, that erstwhile university, they recorded. There is a what we call a Shilalikhita is available, that they are following the academic Maryada, the of what we call academic discipline, that is Maryada of Kantaloor Sala. So Kantaloor Sala was recognized at that time as one of the leading universities as far as the academic endeavors are concerned, the real research is concerned. So we want to revive that. That is our interest, and we have our humble attempt for that. And we are planning. We have very good scholars in Kerala. Not only in Kerala, we have at national level, we have a very good what we call advisory committee, where the scholars, the real scholars in Vedantas and other Upanishads and other whatever other philosophical systems, and even arts and fine arts and other things are also there. So what I want to say is that our attempt is very sincere, and we have done a lot, and we are going to do further with the help of the scholars in the different fields of our study. This is what I want to say now.
Yeah,
Namaskar.
thank you.
Namaskar. Namaskar.
Namaskar. To follow up just for a moment, the the speaker mentioned the that it can be a mere formality for accommodating other points of view, and that there is an even higher path. So in the context of global peace, the idea that ŚaṅKARāCārya represents, that you can go beyond mere formality to combine a pure bhakti element to the embrace of the unity of the spirit, has the potential for global peace, as was just described. And if university efforts can exemplify this, then these university efforts can be the node or the seed for such possibilities in the modern world.
Yeah, actually, your question there, the university, the present university, we are planning in our departments, especially in Vedanta department, Vedanta section. What we are feeling that there should be, we are familiar with the interpretation of spiritual interpretation of or philosophical interpretation of the Mahavakya and other things. But all these Mahavakyas can be interpreted ethically also. Once you speak about ethics, sometimes people say that plurality should be there. Not like Shankara. Shankara is not, Shankara's philosophy is what we call talk about oneness. So all the Jivatmas, they are identical. They are one. Then there is no scope for plurality. This problem is there. So I think I have a direct question to Tattwamayanaji, that how, whether in ethical interpretation of the Mahavakyas, like Tattvamasi and other things, you have to love you have to love your neighbor. You have to you do not kill. All these things are there. See, up to the Vivekananda went to the what we call the European countries and like that, spoke even American states, and spoke at length about Shankara philosophy. And he was telling that because of Shankara's this philosophy, Jivo Brahmaiva, because of that, so all Jivas are Brahma, and there is no distinction about the self, Jivatma, no difference. And there the question is that the identity or the difference, which is more important for ethical interpretation?
Thank you for that question. Can I answer?
Yes, surely.
Okay. So so the idea is in Shankara's Bhashya it comes now. He doesn't deny the reality of differences of pluralism at empirical level, worldly level, socio-anthropological level. But behind and beyond these apparent differences, there is an underlying spiritual oneness that should not be forgotten when we focus on differences. That's the idea behind. So difference of we should celebrate pluralism. That's a current idea. We should celebrate pluralism. We should appreciate differences. That's true. In fact, appreciating differences is an important aspect of focusing on the underlying unity. We can appreciate differences only when we focus on the underlying unity, because differences are only empirical, superficial. On the surface, there are differences. To give an example, if you look at the teachings, let's say Bible, give an example. If you look at the Bible and look at the Bhagavad Gita or any Hindu scriptures, there will be differences with regard to the anthropological, sociological, the language in which Jesus Christ spoke. And the parables, the illustrations, the examples, the stories are different. But the underlying principle of spiritual humanism, the love and compassion, all these things, which is an important aspect of Advaita. That's why I mentioned earlier. At the philosophical level, Advaita focuses on the fundamental unity of everything in this world. At the empirical level, in our day-to-day life, that Advaitic unity expresses itself as compassion, appreciation, not conflict, understanding, broad-mindedness. Because we can be broad-minded only, we can be compassionate, we can be tolerant only when you recognize that there is an underlying unity and oneness. Otherwise, we will be fighting all the time. The differences are not eternal. Behind the differences, there is underlying unity. So they go together. One is not different from the other. That's why Ekam says Indram Mitram Varunam Agni Rahu.
Yes.
Then only Ekam says Vipra Bhagavadavandi. Indra, Mitra, Varuna, Agni, all the different deities, Vedic pantheon are mentioned. Soma, Pavamana, and so on. But then Ekam Sat, that's it. Ekam Sat is the Advaitic ideal. It comes in the first mandala, 164th Sukta in the Rigveda, Samhita. It's a Samhita mantra. The point is, so that even it also Mundaga Upanishad comes in, and also again surprisingly is a Rigveda mantra. Yada Nadya Syantamana Samudriya Astam Gachanti Namarupe Vikaya. Tata Namarupa Vimuktaga Paratparam Purusham Ubaiti Divyam. Who is the Paratparam Purusham? That is Brahman. That idea later evolved into Brahman idea when it came to Shankara. That's the greatness of Shankara. All these Advaitic ideas are found in even Rigveda Samhita, both mantra and Brahmana portions of it. But then the point is that became a philosophy, an ideal, a doctrine, a spiritual principle in Shankara. When he came to Shankara, that's the difference.
Tattwamayana Swamiji, I want to just have a clarification that only after that Vivekananda Swamiji went to America and other European countries, explaining the Shankara philosophy, as you told, only after the European community and even American community, they could understand the meaning of the Bible, even the Bible words, sentences that do not kill, do not disturb your neighbor, love your neighbor. Why you should not kill the other person? Why you should not kill or disturb other person? Because it is disturbing yourself. Because
that is Advaitic idea. Correct.
Yeah. So this idea, I think this Bible sentence, the Bible sentence that do not kill or love your neighbor as you love yourself, and so many things, these expressions have becomes meaningful and understood the real spirit only when Shankara's philosophy was known to came to the knowledge of the Western people.
Yeah. So of course, I think the idea that it is spiritual responsibility on our part not to hurt anyone, not to heal anyone, that is already the underlining principle in the biblical teaching. But then it was focused and emphasized by Swami Vivekananda. See, the greatness of Vivekananda was, before him, the Upanishads were already translated by European Indologists. Before even Max Muller had already started his work before Swami Vivekananda. And even German Indologists already started. But the point is, the problem with European Indology was mostly philological and linguistic. See, for example, the way somebody like Max Muller or some of the early German Indology they spoke, Moni Williams, MacDonald, they spoke as scholars of language, grammar. But then Vivekananda had this additional element of spiritual experience. And also he had seen somebody who had experienced Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So when he spoke, there was a conviction in his words which was missing among the European scholars. Remember, before Vivekananda, Emerson had already received a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, which was translated by Charles Wilkins. He was a clerk in the East India Company's office in Calcutta in 18th century. I mean, when India became, the Battle of Plassey was fought in 1757. Lord Warren Hastings became the first Governor General, and then during his time, the first Bhagavad Gita translation was done by Charles Wilkins. It is very inaccurate translation, and Emerson got a copy of this book in late 1820s from Thomas Carlyle. What happened? So that he was influenced, but that was only very, very superficial. When Vivekananda came, he spoke as an authority. When they listened to him, well, what this man says is true. You get a conviction when you listen from somebody who's actually speaking about what he really knows. Not only in words, but also in experience.
It all because of the Shankara philosophy
Exactly.
properly interpreted by Vivekananda ji.
Absolutely. Because so I tell you, if you ask me the question, where Vivekananda's interpretation of Shankara's philosophy was the same as some of the professors, pundits in India interpret, may be different. But the point is, the spirit, the soul of Advaita, that only Vivekananda could represent more than any Sanskrit Pandit. It is obvious. So the point is,
even when you speak about world peace and also these what we call the social and cultural harmony, when we speak all those things, I think even Gandhiji, he imbibed Vedanta, Shankara Vedanta, and he was telling that I am an Advaitist. He several places told, and he even gone to the extent of saying that even my non-violence, my theory on non-violence is from Ahimsa, from Advaita Vedanta.
So I think there's maybe there is a statement in even Shankara Bhasha itself. He talks about Ahimsa. Ahimsa is a great principle in Shankara Vedanta. So
in one place in Bhagavad Gita Bhashya also, Shankara mentions about it.
That's See, Ahimsa, wait a minute. Ahimsa, Ahimsanam, Praninam, Pida, Varjanam. Gita Bhashyam, the 16th chapter. Ahimsa.
That was I was mentioning. I was mentioning that.
Pida, Varjanam. That is Bhashyakara says.
That is.
So Gandhi's Ahimsa came from Shankara.
And even as an interpreter of Shankara, Mahatma Gandhi, he gone to the extent of saying, even when you speak, your words should not injure others. That is also ahimsa. So even with words you could not. So to that extent, the Shankara philosophy has been influenced. It is nice. And today's talk, Swamiji, your talk mainly, I think, even though you have discussed several things, world peace and harmony and all those things. And in the Sutra Rupa, you have mentioned. But the thing is that mainly you have harped one point that is very fascinating. That what at present we require in the field of Advaita studies, that really interpreting or teaching what is the meaning of the Vyavaharika,
Yeah.
the
You
what
see,
we call the Vyavaharika Satta, what it is.
thank you for reminding me.
That maybe
When I
there's it.
read,
Now
when I
time is too late, I think
listen,
so.
when I listen, when I read the Sadadushani of
Yeah,
Vedanta Desika,
Sadadushani.
Venkatanatha,
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
terrifying. And also
Mm.
Bhaskara. See,
Mm.
it is so difficult to believe that they were so intelligent, so well educated in Sanskrit tradition language. They could not even understand the actual implication of avidya, maya, and mithya. It
Yeah,
very
yeah,
clearly
yeah, yeah,
stated.
yeah.
Very clearly stated.
Actually, there it is nonsensical that to speak that Maya.
Uh, uh,
That is my opinion.
they don't
Yeah.
understand. Maya is not an
Mithya
important.
is not
Maya
Maya.
is not an.
What
Maya is
Shankara
not.
told Mithya is not Maya.
Yeah. Again, what Shankaracharya meant by Maya. Maya is a way of explaining the Vyavaharika Sattvatvam of Jagat.
Jagat. Yes.
It is neither real in the absolute sense. Sannapi
Not
asannapi
yeah.
bhayatmigano, vinnapi abhitnapi bhayatmigano, sangapi asambhagi bhayatmigano, Mahat Buddha Anivachaniya Rupa. That definition of Maya in Viveka Chudamani. And elsewhere it comes in
Sir,
Bhashya.
Swamiji, actually to say that Vyavaharika Satta is long standing, but not ever standing.
Yeah. Not ever standing. It will be there. Actually, according to Bhashyakara, he says, Prag Brahmatma Vijnana Sarva Loka Vyavakaranam Satyatopati Yadha Swapna Drishta Seva Prag Prabodha. So you have a right to call this world Mithya only when you are at the level of Jiva Brahma Aikyam. Even Sri Ramakrishna, when he was in Samadhi, he was in Jiva Brahma Aikya Anubhuti, world did not exist. But then when he came back, you want to drink water. He is Vyavaharika Satta only.
Yeah.
Shankaracharya lived and walked all over India in Vyavaharika Satta.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Today
Okay.
it was a wonderful intellectual what we call feast we had today, and that mainly because the talk delivered by Swami Tattwamayananda ji. It was a really thought-provoking lecture, and you are a beautiful blend, Swamiji. You are a beautiful blend of tradition and modernity. That is, whenever I heard, I used to hear you, I had this feeling, and that feeling is growing up. So this is what we needed. That what we the in the present situation, that how to bridge the tradition and modernity, and how traditional texts can be interpreted in the modern point of view, in the modern what we call needs, requirements, and in that way. So only simply reading the text and explaining according to traditional shastras, that will not, at that time, that is sufficient. But now time has gone, so many waters have flown under the bridge, and so many things have happened. And now we are living in such a world that we require new interpretations of all these things. That is why I raised the question that whether an ethical interpretation of Tattvamasi Mahavakya or Aham Brahmasmi Mahavakya is possible. So anyway, today it was wonderful. Now we are, I think, no other person to comment on this. If anybody is there, they most welcome. 2 minutes we can provide. Time is too late. Anyway, if somebody is there, they can
There
join
is a
now.
hand raised by Uma.
We are coming to the last phase. Now I invite our secretary of the Kantaloor Sabha and also the founder trustee of the Kantaloor Sala Research Institute, Dr. Pradeep Jyoti to propose vote of thanks.
Shruti Smriti Purana Nama Alayam Karnalayam Namami Bhavatpada Shankaram Loga Shankara. On behalf of Kantaloor Sala, an institute for higher learning and research in ancient Indian wisdom, it is my profound pleasure and privilege to thank everyone for participating in the Śrīśaṅkara Jayanti celebrations on virtual media. Let me extend a special gratitude and appreciation to the most distinguished and honored guest, His Holiness Swami Tattwamayananda, the Minister in charge, Vedanta Society for Northern California, San Francisco, USA. Your august presence affirms the international importance of this discourse. We really thank you very much for your great words of wisdom on Shankara Jayanti Day, depicting Shankarācārya's life, Advaita Siddhantam, especially connecting in today's context. Let me also thank His Holiness Achyuta Swamiya, the Pushpanjali Swamiyara of Sri Padmanabha Swami Temple, who is also the Mupil Swamiyara of Śrīśaṅkara Border, Nadavilmad. We are very fortunate to have His Holiness as our chief patron of Kantaloor Sala. Let me also thank our Professor Murali Madhavan, the managing trustee and the director-in-chief of Kantaloor Sala, who was presiding over today's event. He was a former professor at the Central Sanskrit University and the Śrīśaṅkara University of Sanskrit, Calicut, and recipient of President's Award for his academic and research work on Indian knowledge system. He is the visionary behind Kantaloor Sala Revival Project. Kantaloor Sala served as a leading university of the ancient continent for several centuries from 4th BC to 8th century AD, and had its main campus at Vallishala, Thiruvananthapuram. It had 34 departments and 64 study centers, starting from Vedic literature, Vedic accessories, Darshana system, material sciences like chemistry, physics, biology, mathematics, Veda, Ganita, astrology and Vastuvidya, engineering, civil and mechanical, and Ayurveda, fine arts, theater studies, social science, ship technology, and there are so many other departments. The revival process of Kantaloor Sala under the leadership of Professor Murali Madhavan started in the year 2020. Let me also thank Dr. K.N. Elayat, Professor of Vedanta, who really could not participate due to some technical reason. However, another scholar from United States, Professor Bobby Coleman, who has graciously opened the discussion. Thank you, Professor Bobby Coleman. We also acknowledge the presence of August presence and participation of Professor Unnikrishnan K., Assistant Director and former Principal of Sanskrit College, who proposed the welcome address. Let me thank Brahmasri Mullamangala Narayana Nambudiri, Secretary Brahmasa Madam Trishur, who is also an active member of Kantaloor Sabha for his Vedic prayer, and Pandit Unnikishan, an engineer and scientist of Indian Space Research Organization. He is also a Vedic scholar and member of Kantaloor Sabha for the Santipada, which will be followed by my address. This event is not just a discussion, it is a vital platform for developing an action plan to preserve the knowledge base and integrate it into modern practice. So thank you once again for joining us in this crucial phase of the Kantaloor Sala's journey. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Pradeep Jyoti. Now we will conclude this very meaningful academic session of Kantaloor Sala and our auspicious of Śrīśaṅkara Jayanti with a Vedic chanting Shanti Patha by Sri Unnikrishan V, who is as told by Professor Dr. Jodi, who is a member of Kantaloor Sala and he is a engineer scientist in ISRO. Sri Unnikrishan V.
ब्रह्मन् ब्राह्मणो ब्रह्मवर्चसि जायताम् आस्मिन् राष्ट्रे राजन्य ईशव्यः शूरो महारथो जायताम् दोग्ध्रीधेनु वोडानड्वान् आशुः सप्ति पुरन्धिर्योषा जिष्णुरथेष्ठा सभेयो युवा आस्य यजमानस्य वीरो जायताम् निकामे निकामेनः पर्जन्यो वर्षतु भलिन्यो न ओषधयः पच्यन्ताम् योगक्षेमो नः कल्पताम् योगक्षेमो नः कल्पताम् योगक्षेमो नः कल्पताम् ओम
धन्यवाद उन्निकृष्णन् महाभागाः. अधुना अस्माकं समाप्तिः अस्माभिः करणीया अस्य सम्मेलनस्य. It is a great occasion and it is a great intellectual feast, as I told you earlier. Very thought-provoking discussion or a paper presentation was done by Swami TATTWAMAYANANDA ji. We have to hear him further because he has so many modern interpretations with him as far as our classical texts are concerned, especially on Advaita Vedanta, in Advaita Vedanta. So anyway, we are very happy and thanking all for their auspicious presence in this August virtual platform. Thanking one and all, we conclude this session.